Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody. Hope y'all are doing well. Sorry we were a little bit late. It took us a minute to get our sound situated and get fixed, but everything's a-okay now. We are joined by a guest that, as far as I know, other than being mentioned in John Plaster's book and being in some of the team histories of Jason Hardy, I don't know if he's done an interview before. So we were very lucky on that front to get him here to share with us and answer questions. And we've got Mr. Stephen Troxell joining us. He was with RT Hawaii. He was the 1-1, and he actually held the team leader position until his DEROS in late of 1971. And if you can look over his shoulder, we'll be talking about it. He has his CRP patch, which y'all remember Mr. John Good talking about during his interview. But we're going to go ahead and get started. Guys, if y'all have got questions as we go along, go ahead and get them in and we'll get to them. But Mr. Steve, we usually kind of like to ask the basics. When were you born and where were you born?
Well, I'm born January 16, 1950, and in Illinois, of all places, Rockford, Illinois. But I never spent any time there. My dad was from Wisconsin, so Beloit, Wisconsin was right across the border. And so I guess I was always going across the border. That's kind of funny. And it was, anyway, went there to get born. You had to get birthed at the hospital there. So yeah,
Wow.
but and then we moved out to California. My dad was chasing the computer chip. Was doing the electronic stuff, and that's where the industry was blossoming out there. And he was in the Bay. We were in the Bay Area, and so I
Wow.
did my Wonder Bread years. K through 12 out there, and in the Bay Area, California, and
Wow.
then went into the, you know, and I got out of there. Graduated in 1968, 68, 67. Anyway, tried to go to college, and it was like this wasn't working. So I said, "Oh, what the heck? Let's go in the army." So because I could pick a career. And of course, when I was in the army, you take a battery test, and a guy with a green beret comes out and says, "We don't want any of you guys. In fact, we don't think you can make it.
Yeah.
You're all too stupid for us guys." And you go,
I'll show
"Well, I
you.
guess we'll show him." Well, we'll give that a shot. And so right then and there, I signed up for an extra year to go
Oh,
to go to school. It's a good thing I made it through the Q course and made it through all the phases, because if not, I'd have been probably a cook somewhere out in Okinawa, Japan, or something. But which is kind of funny. I guess I was always volunteering for stuff, and that was the start. I mean, it was basic infantry AIT because I wanted to go into weapons, and airborne, of course, and then right straight to Fort Bragg without any leave. It's Fort Bragg. I guess it's called something else now. It's not Fort Bragg anymore, but
no, they've actually just rechanged it back to Fort Bragg,
oh, good.
honoring not the Civil War general, but a different Bragg. But it is Fort Bragg again now.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
You know,
Speaking of history, did you have family history of military service or?
my dad was in World War II,
Okay, wow,
and in North Africa and Italy, and
whoa,
he was a radio mechanic guy on P-38 Lightnings. So he
wow.
was assigned to a fighter squadron. Didn't fly them. He wanted to, but he said his eyes weren't good enough, and but he got close. And it's kind of funny because he had collected all these old Yank magazines and all this the old little GI Joe. It wasn't called GI Joe, but it was a cartoon of a guy in a foxhole. You
Oh,
know, the old cartoons that would be in their monthly magazine, and he collected those. And I used to pour through those and read them. You know, and yeah, I would remember stuff. And it was there. I decided infantry must be the way to go because the one guy was Ernie or somebody, one of the GIs, you know, and the GIs were all darkly bearded, and their helmet was crooked with the chin strap unbuckled, and they always got a cigarette screwed into their mouth like it was put there with a screw gun, And he's looking at a tank, and he says, "Man, I don't know about you, Joe." Or well, one guy was Willie, Joe and Willie, I think the name was. He says, "I don't know about you, Joe, but I don't sure wouldn't want to be in one of them moving foxholes, because tanker position was a bad position." Characters are Willie and Joe. There we go. Thank you, Bill. I just read it on the
yeah,
bottom there. Willie
yeah.
and Joe.
Alex, up front by Bill
Alex. Hi,
Mauldin.
Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that so I was always curious about it, and my dad had saved a bunch of memorabilia and
Oh,
stuff, and I still have some of it this day,
wow.
and he got himself a infantry German infantry belt buckle and some medals and trading and stuff. Like I say, he wasn't front line duty, but he was close enough. Close enough to get bombed and strafed a few times. So, hey, what the heck?
Wow, man. That we always enjoy hearing guys if they have family history and their fathers being in WW2 and kind
Well,
of.
on my mother's side, now my mother's 100% Finnish. She's from Finland, and so is my uncle, and they came over during right after the Winter War up there. So my uncle was involved in that, you know, and he was up there when even up, the family members were up there when the White Finns and the Red Finns had their little civil war, and so they had a lot of history there.
Yeah, Larry
Needless to
Thorne
say,
was still there.
needless to say, they don't like the Russians very much.
Oh no, no, no. We got a Finnish buddy that's probably watching this. Hey, Yari. No, they just ask Larry Thorne. Well, you can't ask Larry Thorne, but just look at Larry Thorne's story. They despise the Russians.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
and yeah, they were interesting. That was interesting.
Absolutely. And a shade of stuff to come with commando like units and such. When you started when you joined and were going through basic and AIT, this is I think you said 67, 68 when you graduated. So this is probably 69ish maybe.
Yeah.
I can imagine y'all are being somewhat inundated, and Vietnam's pretty much all over the news and in the newspaper, isn't it, at this time?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I think it was I graduated in 68, 69, 70, and then in 71. Yeah, I was over in Vietnam. Yeah, but uh, that's kind of funny. He was living in the Bay Area. There were the Berkeley riots and all that crazy stuff going on, and I was more curious about it. Me and a couple of my friends of mine, we were more curious about it than whatever. And and knowing my uncle, and on the Finnish side of the family, we kind of grew up with a little different idea of what communism is,
Mhm.
you know. And so when they had people like for their heroes like Che Guevara
Oh
and
God.
all that the Cuban shit and all
Yeah.
that stuff going on, you know,
That shirt makes me
my,
want to
my
puke.
uncle, if he was like just absolutely furious. And so we got a little bit of a different outlook on communism.
A real
Uh,
history
I
lesson.
mean, he was there in Finland when Molotov actually bombed the place, and Molotov
Top
cocktail
cocktail. Yes.
name was invented
Mm-hmm.
because they were dropping the bombs and fire bombs and stuff. So yeah,
Gosh. Wow.
so and Uncle Tano, he skied. Of course, everybody in Finland cross country
Oh.
skied.
Oh yeah, they're born on skis
Yeah,
almost.
that's what they do, and they did the Mati type tactics on the Russian um, convoys, because it was all swampy area on the Karelian Isthmus there,
Hmm.
and
That's what
and
Larry Thorne did actually with his unit that he was a part of. I
oh,
forgot his leader, but yeah,
yeah,
they were doing those hit and runs and cross country just like crazy. And in
yeah,
fact, he taught cross country skiing at Bat Tolls.
yeah. Okay. Boy, I would have liked to have got some bad souls. I should have stayed in.
I've heard great stories from the guys that got to go experience the 10th group AO.
Yeah.
um,
Well,
you're
I went back over there with the National Guard. Uh, After I got out, long after I was out for a while, I joined the National Guard in Wisconsin
oh
at an
wow.
engineer unit and was able to go over to Germany to build tank trails for
Oh.
and stuff for the Germans, and that was fun because I'd been to Germany before and spoke a little German and loved their beer.
Oh yes, oh yes. That's the first thing that pops up. That and the beer and the beautiful women.
Yeah.
um, so you've progressing on and you're getting to training group, and you said you were wanting to be a weapons man.
Yeah, well, at that time, uh, everybody that came through training group, it just seemed like everybody was stuck in Camo at first.
Mm.
They ran you all through Camo because they wanted to see who could, do Morse code. And if you could hit 20 words a minute,
you're going Camo.
You're going Camo, and up to Pisgah National Forest, hanging out in the woods there, dotting and dashing all the time. And I just wasn't up for it. I didn't want to do it, and so I had some discussions and had some things, and the one sergeant there was like Camo sergeant guy. He said, "Okay," and so what they did is they said, "Now he's not going to make it for 20 words a minute. So where do you want to go?" I said, "Well, weapons, hell, that's the cool thing, right?" And they said, "Well, you can't go to medical. You can't go to medics because everybody wants to go to medics. So, everybody wants to become a medic because the program, that's back then is when we still had dog lab. I think now, if they even have it, and they changed it to goat lab, where you come back to brag and they shoot a goat or shoot a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it's definitely Goat Lab.
Yeah.
The animal rights group found out and had a hissy fit over that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just like up in Khantoum, Alaska, when I was up there, and an SF team was coming up there to do some training, and they wanted to get some dogs. They knew we had a bunch of dogs up there that were earmarked for destruction, and to get the dogs so they could practice intubations on them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, they weren't going to kill them, but even then, that was a touchy subject. Oh, you can't say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the
SPCA come running.
The other thing that was totally couldn't talk about was practicing intubations for infants, in which they use kittens.
Oh wow!
Like, my God, kittens!
Even worse, dogs is one thing. Kittens, oh Lord, they're gonna have some.
And at that time, that's what I was into. I was with the fire department up there and doing some training and becoming a paramedic up there, and it was like kittens. I always remember them. I kind of mad at those because their little sharp teeth would poke holes through your rubber gloves.
Oh man, yeah.
It's just kind of a weird thing to even talk about. So maybe we should. But that's light.
But so you no medic, that's everybody's wanting to be a medic.
Yeah.
You end up finding a way into weapons though.
Yeah, I ended up getting into weapons. Yeah, and I made honor graduate out of weapons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got my little. Oh,
There it is.
let
Wow.
me get that off the wall here. No, maybe I can't get it off the wall. Oh yeah, I got my little Green Beret plaque and for
Oh,
weapons school.
that
I
is
don't know if you can
amazing.
focus on that,
Yes,
but I
sir. We
carried this thing around me for years. But it's a little Green Beret. It says honor graduate, private Stephen H. Troxell, rep weapons. Oh yeah, there it is, 370. That's when I graduated from that. And
wow.
so, and so at the time, uh, and I didn't realize this till later, is I got E6 out of that.
Oh,
Yeah,
instant
they
bump
were
up.
giving honor graduates out of the schools rank, and part of the reason was because they were losing people in Vietnam.
Mm,
You know, uh, I think I could verify this. I'm sure a lot of other Green Berets will verify that a lot of high-ranking sergeants with lots of experience were getting lost.
mhm.
And I hate to say it, but MACV-SOG was about the worst,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And that's
sir.
what Mark Pollock said to me too. My buddy Mark, he says, "God, I'm going to MACV-SOG because it's the toughest," you know. And we're sitting around here picking up pine cones and cigarette butts and stuff. We're going. I said, "Okay, let's go." and, and actually, I was 3 months short of a full tour. So and this is not brag, it's just fact. But what I did is I went to Washington and saw, and I keep forgetting her name. I think
Miss
it was
Billy Alexander.
Alexander, Millie Alexander, yeah. And and she would, I went up and talked to her and said I want to go over to MACV-SOG. And at the time, the scuttlebutt, the rumors coming back was uh, CCN was doing a lot of economy of force missions. They were getting in a lot of stuff. They weren't really running Recon, and they said CCC is the one that's still running Recon. They're still doing a lot of the over the border stuff and wiretaps and watching the road, and mapping the road out, the road system. They had also was it Elder Sun operation?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, they were doing sabotage operations, which I know Davidson was involved with that, and that's why he would never shoot tracers in his RPD. The big sardine cans of ammo you'd open up from the Chi-Coms and stuff. Well, they were taking those in there, and they were salted. They were salted with round. You've probably heard of this story.
With bad rounds, so they would blow up on the
Yeah,
user. Yeah.
right, exactly.
Whew.
Yeah, and so, but I used them. I even made a little Christmas tree with red tracers and 5.56 and green tracers 7.62 by 39.
That is
Had to keep
hilarious.
the spirits up.
So you
But
actually were one of the guys that got to go see Mrs. A and get a SOG assignment from her.
yes, yeah,
That's
yeah. So
fantastic.
I went up there with my little my little uniform on with the one little ribbon and my brand new staff sergeant stripes on and green beret and just and I tell you the truth is uh, I was never very butch, so to speak. That's why I grew the mustache as soon as I got out and when I was over there because I looked like I was about 14 years old. As young as I looked on the thing, and it was like, what in the hell? What are they? they're robbing the cradle. But anyway, so I went up and saw her, Mrs. Alexander, and yes, there she is, and and uh, took her some flowers and some chocolates, and went in there and talked to her and got it set up, and so. The next thing I remember, I'm down in formation at B-53, and the Delta Company of the 6th Special Forces. That's who I was assigned to before. In fact, I was assigned to the same unit. A lot of the people I know went on the Sante raid.
Oh,
You know?
wow.
And so, uh, you know.
I forgot that was that timing. That was around the time they were picking guys to go on the raid.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
They were going. They were doing that. That's where I saw my first red dot sight. The guy when they came back, and the red dot wasn't even a see-through sight. It was just a red dot, and a scope about 6 or so inches long, 7 inches long, and you had to open both eyes to use it because you couldn't see through the sight. You just saw the dot, and so with both your eyes, the little dot would form out there, and you'd focus on both of those. You know, and a good friend of mine, my memory's getting so bad, I can't remember his name now. He got to go on the raid, and he brought that back with him as a souvenir. Yeah, and he showed me the site. It was just really interesting. Of course, now with the red dots and the green dots, you got the lens there, and you could see through them.
Oh,
but
yeah.
the original one, you couldn't. It was just a dot, and you focus that somewhere in your brain with the other eye. But they worked, And I don't want to steal nobody else's thunder, but I heard some stories about what actually happened there, and there's quite a bit they still haven't talked about,
Oh,
So
wow. There's an event, I believe this November, and I think I've gotten an invite, and I'm really hoping I get to go to it,
yeah,
to speak to some of the surviving members. But interesting enough, there were a few SOG guys that actually ended up on the raid, as well, or
yeah,
guys that had done a SOG tour, I should say, not active SOG men.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And they were
so,
serious. Now, I mean, they were dead serious. There was one guy that evidently went downtown and said something, because they let them, they would build the camp every night
oh, yes,
and tear
sir.
it down during the day.
Mhm.
The place of training, and I think they were down in Florida somewhere. I can't remember the name. And
Eglin thing.
yeah, was it Egland or no Elkhart? Some Air Force base down there. Uh, I'll think of it as soon as I get off the air here. But yeah, it was pretty interesting, and I'm often curious because on some of the stories I'd heard from friends of mine that like, that was interesting.
The-
Well, let's
I
put it this way: it was like they just didn't go there and find out. Nobody's home. Let's go. They left a little calling card, so to speak. You know, before they left. So there was that was quite the mission, and it's too
absolutely.
bad because the poor prisoners were just down the road, like a quarter or half mile, listening to all this stuff go on, and
Watching it, not only hearing, but
yeah,
literally
exactly,
seeing it. Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
and
God.
it must have made them feel good and bad at the same time,
Yeah. I can only
So,
imagine. I can only
so
imagine.
yeah, really. But
With
yeah, so what I did is I extended for 3 months. I said, yeah, I want to go to Vietnam. So she said, well, you can. I says, well, look, I'm going to extend for 3 months. And she says, well, I don't usually do this, but
oh my
she
goodness.
did. So when I went over there, um, and she asked where you wanted to go, and I said CCC because I heard they were still doing Recon. I'm doing a lot of Recon. Not that CCN wasn't, because they were. CCN was a tough place. That was a hard a school of hard knocks there.
Oh yeah.
And Mark was up there. Mark Pollock went up there, and he was with Marble, like I said before. But had a couple of offers to go up there to work when I was over there, and it was like, well, we're putting together another team that just got um, in trouble. Let's put it that way. He got in trouble, and it was like, huh, okay. So I was happy with working with in CCC. I really was. I found that the people were great. And and that and it, and of course I got along. Well, one of the things that Special Forces is known for is to be able to get along with indigenous people.
Oh yes,
You know,
yes.
and so I got along with them. As a matter of fact, yeah, there's Ray. There's Ray and me with a cigarette in my mouth, and I forget the other guy's name. He's playing around. That was out at the training range up there by CCC, and we're out there shooting them up and running AI drills and whatever. And Ray was our big mountain guard, and he ended up carrying RPD too. So
Oh wow, he must have been big. Yeah, if he's carrying the
yeah, so
RPD.
he was. He's a pretty big guy, for a Sedang mountain guard, because they were pretty small people, but muscular. I mean,
Oh,
being being small does not mean they weren't powerful.
no, no. We've heard some tales of them out in the bush. Um, well, what is it like when you first get in country? Are you what's the pipe? How do you get to Khartoum and check in at CCC?
Well, we flew into uh, Tansanut, and then got on a plane and went straight up to Nha Trang,
Hmm.
and spent a couple of days processing in there. You know, and they told you not to walk too far out by the the berm there by the barbed wire, because they were taking sniper fire. And then flew right up to they put us on a Blackbird C-130 and flew us right up to CCC. And and then when I got there, McCurry had asked for me after I went to 10 school. I was up there, and I got there, and I went back to Longton to 10 school, and uh, some interesting stories there. And and then
That's crazy. Okay.
I ran a mission with RT New Hampshire. With their the the bat their bat patch. It was red and yellow with a bat. What it looks like now. Don't quote me on this as being like too sure, but it sure looked like the little seal that
The
was on the
Bacardi.
bottle of a Bacardi rum bottle.
Yes, sir. It's. I mean, from a distance, it looks just like their RT Bacardi.
Yeah, exactly. I still got the patch around here for that, and I was happy with that, proud of that. McCurry was gone uh, on a leave somewhere, and God, I can't remember the name of the guys I went with. I'll think of them in a second, but we had a successful mission out and that was still before were TF2AE for Task Force 2 Alpha Echo Advisory Element.
So y'all could still wear your berets and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And then before they told us, you got to take those off. And it's like, oh, okay,
Okay.
you're really not here. Okay, and that was when we ended up coming out on strings, you know, and that. So, that picture you just showed, I'm trying to remember where that was. And if you look in the background of that picture, through that wire fence, you'll see the face of somebody back there. You'll see a person back there. You see him in the background,
With a
and that was
cigarette.
one of the yards back there. And
Oh.
Sorsby there, it's really kind of funny because he's got the old army patch on his shoulder, and so not the SF patch, but we were authorized to wear the MACV, the Military Advisory Command patch, the MACV patch, and then that one's called just the Army. It means you were in the Army. Oh, it was like nondescript patch and that. So anyway,
We've heard he
uh,
was a great scrounger. We've seen the minigun photos of that when he got the minigun, and heard
yes.
he was quite the guy.
Now, and did you hear or not? Because I saw the barrels. He had the minigun, and I used to see him tinkering around with the thing and playing with it. And right there in the middle of camp, right by the talk, he'd run the thing, not to shoot, but just to test the function. So the live rounds would come pouring out, but it wouldn't shoot. But also right there, and I wondered if it was him, and I wouldn't want to say because he could probably still get in trouble. There was barrels for a Vulcan. Yeah, there it is. There's the old thing on the. There it is. But there was barrels to a Vulcan, 20 millimeter. And boy, that raised some stink because when I was getting ready to leave, they were coming around and they were kind of trying to pick up things, uh, and they came in. They don't like to lose track of a 20 millimeter Vulcan cannon. They could take a minigun getting lost or being purloined, shall we say, or borrowed. I'm sure he was just borrowing it.
Oh yeah.
And but there was barrels there, and I didn't see the rest of the gun, but I saw the barrels laying there, and it was like, boy, they really got their ass in a twitch over that. The brass did,
I
They
can
had
only
Air Force
imagine.
people down there and, and stuff, and like, uh,
Looking for a Vulcan cannon that
yeah,
someone had just happened to borrow or accidentally walk off with, shall we say?
yeah, no, exactly. And so, and I'm sure if given enough time, we would have had a Vulcan cannon there because he'd fix that up so that you could drive around inside the camp and up to the, to the berm line to the where the bunkers were and give you a little extra firepower, which
That
we loved,
That is too cool. I love hearing about that. His son recently found the podcast and had heard when someone else was talking about his dad, and we've got him in the group online, and he's been able to connect with some of you guys that served with his dad. So I'm sure he'll enjoy getting to hear and see this, that his dad was actually got his hand on a Vulcan cannon as well, not just a minigun.
Oh,
uh,
well,
uh,
I'm saying I don't want to say it was him for sure. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on borrowing a Vulcan cannon or not.
Oh, I'm sure that no fingerprints, and I'm sure there's a statute of limitations on that. So I'm sure he's good to go on that one.
Yeah.
Um,
So anyway,
did
but
did
he was a great scrounger.
oh gosh, and that's what some of the stuff we love. We know SF is renowned for it, but SOG, we love the SOG scroungers as well. Did
And
when
that's why
did
we had lobster night. You
oh
know,
yeah, steak,
You-
lobs. I mean,
once a week it was steak night. At there, but somebody made a trade and traded a bunch of steaks for a bunch of lobsters, and so you're going to the chow hall. It's lobster night. It's Friday night.
that
Like a
is
good Catholic out there, you got to eat fish.
that is wonderful. I thought I heard you at the very beginning. Did you say before you actually got to a recon team that you were sent to Longton for 1-0 school, or
Right, right.
you were? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, right away. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I didn't get to wait at all. They just zipped me right in there, and so yeah, I was down there and that. So
Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. Some guys go right off the bat, and we've heard guys that have done 4 or 5 missions, and
Then they send them.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like what I think they've already learned, but nonetheless, did you when you got back? Did they bring you in and say after those missions you ran with New Hampshire? Was there a like, hey, you're finally officially with Hawaii, or what was the process like of getting
Well,
on the regular team?
yeah. Well, the thing was, and there was a little bit of hard feelings about that because Curry was, he'd already been there a year,
Mhm.
and he was on an extended leave, and I wanted to work.
Yeah,
Crazy
oh yeah.
me, I wanted to work, and so I went talking around and bumped into Dover, and uh, yeah, they needed some help on a team, and somebody of theirs, and I think it was Justice was on vacation, was on leave, and so I went. Him, I love that hat. It was Suey Pup too, the interpreter. Um, uh, we so I just started fell in with them, you know, and
Wow.
as it progressed, as the missions progressed, then the CRP thing came up and all that, and they said, "Nah, no, you're stuck with us now." You're, know, just like with Masterson, it told Joe Walker told Masterson, "Well, I don't like the guy that doesn't like you, so you're on my team." And
That's
you're
one of
big
my
enough to carry an RPD, so you're going to carry an RPD with
that's
700
one of
rounds
my,
of ammo. Oh,
that
okay.
that's one of my favorites to hear. He's like, he doesn't like you, so you're on my team. I don't like him, so you must be good people if he doesn't like you. Oh man. So at that time is you said Mr. Emmett Les. I heard he went by different names at different times. Was he 1-0 of Hawaii at this point in
Yeah,
time?
yeah. This time he was 1-0
Wow.
of Hawaii, and
Okay.
uh, then the kind of the mix up there was Dover, bless his soul. He had malaria, you know, and
Ooh.
and he had contracted malaria, and they had treated it fairly successful, you know. And I don't know why he was still in country, but he was. Uh, but he had a bad relapse, bad episode of that,
Eesh.
and that was a horrible thing to watch, the poor guy.
Mm,
And then after that, he said, "Now I'm done with the bush," and he went and became a copywriter,
mm.
you know, which a lot of the 1-0s did.
Yes,
After a
sir.
while, I think they got a little tap on the shoulder from one of the angels, the good angel or the bad angel that sits on your shoulders, and said, "Man, maybe you better just go fly covey."
Yeah.
Not that, that was a safe job either.
Yeah. Any less dangerous, shall we say?
Yeah, yeah. So then it was me and Sorois on that team, me and David Sorois,
Okay.
um, and so we ran a bunch of missions together, there we go. And there's uh, Justice right there, and he had not been running on the team.
Wow.
Well,
So
actually,
it was you and just David running two Americans.
right, yeah.
Wow.
So he was
Wow.
running 1-0, and I was the 1-1, and
Wow.
I,
Let's see.
I lucked out on a whole bunch of things because usually, a 1-1 or a 1-2, they get stuck with the radio, and when when Skip came on the team when he first got there. Besides making him lock up the team house during a rocket attack, that was pretty shitty of me. Uh, but I made him carry the radio. Yeah, I said, "Don't go too far from me." And so, uh, yeah. So anyway, this is the mission we got back where we had the the naked guy and the girl looking through the mirror at Ray, our RPD gunner, and the officer, with the guy with the gold teeth and the uh, he had a set of medals on him from South Vietnamese Army medals. But he was all dressed up in NVA outfit, and so and at the same time we had uh, what not Westmoreland, but Abrams, the next general that took over, was
Oh
visiting
yeah.
the camp. Abrams did not like special forces very much,
Mm.
and he didn't like MACV-SOG very much at all because he basically didn't like the idea of us having this top secret clearance, and having a walk on water pass, which said you could be anywhere at any time with anything in your possession, you know, you know, and be armed, you know. So anyway,
I've heard some, I've heard some various tales of when he was at the different CNCs that he managed to rub the guys the wrong way at every single CNC he visited.
yeah, yeah, and so yeah, well, we were out, and it was a 3-team event. Ranger Melvin was leading the thing, and we were. It was an in-country mission up there close to Det-A, uh, and we had did our RON, had rested overnight, and that next morning, we were moving slow and quiet. And for 3 teams working together, we were getting the hang of it a little bit, getting the hang of it down because uh, it's like that guy Dawson said in one of his stories I read. He says, "We were too small to really kick ass and too big to really hide." And so we had to figure out something on how this is gonna work. But that morning I woke up and I remember this to this day because for some reason I'm putting my face paint on again, and and yeah, everybody had their own little special pattern that they use. And this day I put it on half and half, just about one half green, one half light green. Because I figured from a distance it just looks, you just need something to break it up. And if you put on too much dark all over the place, your face looks black. And you know, and so anyway, we had gone down there. Dave Royce had gone down there, and we heard somebody, and we told Melvin. He says, "We're hearing somebody down in this creek bed here, right down here, and it sounds like they're washing up and talking and whatever." So RTY we peeled off and went down there, and Dave Royce took Pox, the point man, and he said, I'm gonna go this way. You go down this way." And it just happened to be a trail leading right straight to that creek. And Ray, who was second, the big Senang Mountain Guard with the RPD, this time he was carrying Car 15 with an XM 203 on it, right? XM 203. I'm dating myself, but anyway, and they heard these people down there, and now they're understanding the Vietnamese or whatever, and he just practically ran down that thing, and I'm trying to get his attention to slow down. We're gonna sneak up on these guys, but I fucking said, "In for a penny, in for a pound. I'm on your tail. I'm with you." And Hamek, the tail gunner, he ran up there and he was with us too, and we come out of this trail. And there's this creek bed here, and it's about a 4-foot, 5-foot drop down to the creek bed. It's probably 8 feet wide, another 4 feet up the other side. Straight across from us is this NBA officer. And we knew he was an officer, and something was funny because he had all gold teeth, And we knew that because Ray just cut him in half. Ray just, and I was like, "Let's capture him." Well, it ain't happening. Right to Ray's right elbow, there is a guy standing on the bank, not a foot, 2 feet from us, fucking naked. right?
Oh my
He
God.
had somehow taken all his uniform off, and he was going down in the creek, and they were washing up. And that son of a gun took off down the creek bed, jumped in the creek bed, and zipped around and got around the corner, and a naked guy. And here comes Royce and Pock, who's just down the creek a little bit, and the guy comes running up in front of him. And David Royce tells me the story. He says, "God damn it!" He says, "There's this little white ass guy." He said he looked like almost pure white, because seeing somebody naked out in the jungle kind of sticks out,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And he said he raised his gun, he raised his car 15 and was going to shoot him. Then he had just put it onto semi and not full. So he pop, 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 and Pac's shooting at him too, right? And the guy ran through all this gunfire and got away, And,
Holy.
and we laughed about that later. We thought, what the fuck was that? At the same time, off to our left side was this girl, was this woman, and she was up there. And Ray tells me this right straight to my face. He says, "That's the mountain yard girl," and she was looking in her mirror, combing her hair. I still have the mirror today, with her little picture on it, and it was just a little hand mirror, like you'd have in a purse or something. And he said that she saw us through the mirror, just like you see in some movie, like you see in the movie. Somebody, they're looking in the mirror and see somebody sneaking up behind you. And,
Oh.
and she rolled off into this
The,
the creek bed too, and was able to get around the corner real quick, so that she didn't get shot. But the officer, he was shot. He was shot deader than shit. And that's why we were able to inspect him, and that's where we found the medals that were from a South Vietnamese soldier, some type of decoration, about the equivalent of their Bronze Star or whatever. And then you had all these gold teeth. And I don't know anybody that's ever seen a Soviet dentist work, or
that's
the teeth of some of the NBA, the Viet Minh soldiers.
all
They're
gold
doing
and
steel.
silver and
They're doing they're doing amalgams, or sometimes even steel in there. And stainless steel. They don't do gold. Unless you're rich.
hmm
Unless you got some money, or you're maybe a spy. Maybe he had been working for both sides. Uh, and that's what we thought. But and that was the same time that Abrams was back at CCC camp, and so we packed this guy up in a chogie pole, and we're going to bring him back, bring the
oh
dead guy back.
Lord.
And then they got on the radio and said, "No, you guys don't be bringing dead people. We got the general here. You can't be bringing." It's like, but he might be worthwhile looking at, uh, or getting that. So we just took pictures and fingerprinted him, and that was that. And I remember this story to this day, because as it was all calming down, and the rest of the other teams, it was Archie New York and Archie California got there, and they're like, "Oh man, we want to get some shooting done," because
Oh, they met up where y'all were at with the body.
yeah, right.
Oh
Because
man.
we were doing that CRP thing, that
Uh,
that
uh,
training with the three teams, and one of the hard things to do on the teams was to be able to send off one team to search an area, or to reconnoiter an area, and meet up with the other two teams later, because you
mhm.
might have to surround a camp, or you might have to go into a prisoner situation where you're trying to rescue a prisoner or take a prisoner,
Yeah.
Uh, but but no, so I remember so Royce and I sitting there, and he says, "You okay, Steve?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And we were talking about lobsters in Maine, because Royce was from Maine, and talking about this and going over our booty. Well, I got this picture, and I got this medal, and look, did you see his teeth? And he goes, "Yeah." And so Royce is going through his pockets. I'm going through his pockets, opening up his mouth, taking pictures of it. And we're all we're all looking around. Oh God, there was a bunch of people there because they told me this later, and I didn't even realize it at the time. They said, "Well, where were you when the B-40 started flying?" I said, "What B-40?" He says, "Well, somebody was shooting a B-40 at you guys. Didn't you even hear it?" I said, "No, and I didn't see it." And what was happening was some they were shooting and they were down in this creek bed or shooting into the creek bed, and so they were hitting a sheer wall. And so evidently it was a bad shot, thank God, or it just didn't know what he was doing, because we surprised the shit out of him. I mean, Ray dumped his whole 30-round magazine, and he carried a buckshot canister in the 203. So that officer was messed up. I mean, he was dead right now, right there, you know, around his little campfire. But that was, I, I thought to myself, God, this war is a strange thing. This is kind of a funny thing to have all this happen at one time. To see a naked guy, uh, a girl combing her hair, and a dead officer, and kill an officer. It was like, man, it don't get much better than that.
Did y'all all extract it once right then and go back to the
No,
FOB?
no, that
No.
was that was the thing. We didn't extract right then. And what we did is we all consolidated and got out of there, and and
Wow.
went up into an area that was a lot more hilly and thicker jungle, and set up a perimeter overnight. Now we're talking. We're not digging foxholes. I mean, come on. Recon teams, we don't dig foxholes. We don't fill up sandbags and do that and smoke cigarettes and sit in our foxhole. No, and but then we had people coming all night, and we were close enough to this camp uh, that had 175 millimeter long toms, the
Oh,
the artillery, and we're calling in artillery on that. We called in a spooky gunship, a Spectre actually. It wasn't a C-47, but it was the C-130 gunship, and had them out there shooting up the area because there was people pissed and they were all around us. they, they were not happy with what had just happened to them that day before. So uh, we had that, and we even had OV-10 Broncos coming in the morning and shooting them up, with their
gee.
M60s. So we had access to all the firepower in the world, and so since it was going to be a combined, uh, recovery reconnaissance platoon type thing, we used it all. And, and I remember that night because because they're trying to make contact with this one station, uh, radio relay station that was set up on top of a hilltop, a real
Like
rugged hilltop. I couldn't remember the name of it. So we're trying to make radio contact with that and couldn't get a hold of them because they forgot to change their frequency from the day before.
oh God.
And so we're like, you know, if we ever get out of this, we're not going to make these mistakes again. We're not going to do that. But that's just a confusion and stuff. Finally, we figured it out, and somebody was smart enough to say, well, let's try yesterday's frequency.
Oh my gosh.
They're probably up there just fucking around, and
Up on
sure enough,
Leghorn.
then we were able to call in the world on. We were able to call in all these planes, all the firepower that we wanted. Yeah, and and, and the Spectre gunship would sometimes catch our infrared signals, and sometimes they'd lose them. They were going,
Oh my.
well, we don't want to lose your signal right in the middle of a gun run here and
God
wipe you
no.
guys out. But when we get them, we'll shoot. So, oh, yeah, and you just can't make this stuff up. You know, you can't make it up.
Jeez, that is. Oh my! I mean, those CRP missions sound like they were quite a handful. You had mentioned at one time. I know there were two other I was going to ask you about, but did you mention you worked with Mr. Howard Upchurch at one point in time?
Upchurch, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, hmm yeah.
What was that like? Did he come over to Hawaii or did you strap with
No,
him? Or?
he had been on a recon team for a while, and then he had gone over to the Mike Force. You
Ah,
know,
okay.
and so he had just walked across the road there. You know, CCC was set up. One side was recon, the other side was a Mike Force, and he was with like RT Alabama or something. I can't. There's his picture.
RT
You know,
Maine for a bit.
RT what?
RT
Maine.
Maine. Mhm.
Okay, RT Maine for a bit, and then he came over there. And you know, he was on my ass a lot. And I think it's because I was a young guy
Oh
that
yeah.
was an E6, and and that was just him. Heavy drinker though too. You
Old
know?
Korea War vet guy.
Yeah.
Old
Korean, yeah,
school.
old school. And so, you know, there were times there where I just wanted to punch the fucker out. You know,
Oh.
and but there were other times there, but I realized in the long run is I learned a lot
Mm,
because he pushed you. You
mm.
know, he pushed you to do that. You know, and also my speaking of my fault too. Sometimes I was a little passive aggressive against him, just to piss him off. You know, not in the field. You know, you don't play any games like that in the field. You know,
Mm.
you know, but back at camp, yeah, you do. You know, and
Wow.
we were scheduled to go in the next day, and he had a little party and got some of my Montagnards drunk,
Oh Lord.
and it was like, oh fuckers, you know, and so now I got a couple of drunk Montagnards with a bottle of whiskey in their hand. Am I going to be able to take that away from them? No, I'm not going to be able to because now they're getting a little testy. And I don't know if you know about the Montagnards or Sedang Montagnards. They lived up in the hill country, you know. And a lot of times when they argued with each other or argued with other tribes or other villages, they would do it from the mountaintops. You get on a mountaintop and shout across to the other mountaintop. You know, yeah, F your mama, you know, or whatever they would say, you know. And they holler back, oh, yeah, come on over here and say that. Well, of course, nobody did because that means you'd have to walk down the hill and up the
Come
hill.
on.
And now you're at a tactical disadvantage, right? They're going to come up the hill on the people that are up there nice and rested now. And now you're beat because you walked down,
Up the
down a
hill.
ridge back and up a ridge back. And, and so you don't get in their face. The thing is, you know, it, they they wouldn't do good. People would not do good to get right in the Montagnard's face and start screaming because to them that is
Losing face and
yeah, that's losing face. Yeah, that's an invasion of their personal face, their space, and losing face. So yeah, but
yeah.
I did see some interesting things from them from the Montagnards up there, and that's when I think of some of the stupid things I did. I think the funniest thing I ever did was me and Hoochin. We had some time off because we were back from a mission, right? And you know, you do a yeah. There we go. There's that Bernard, the one Bernard guy we had on the team. And see how young I looked? Everybody thought like, oh, you must have been right out of high school. And it was like, yeah, yeah, I was. I turned I turned 21 in Vietnam, so it
wow.
was my birthday came was in January, so it came at the shift. But anyway, me and Hoochin and the Sedang, all the Sedang members from our team, right? Says, well, we'll take you to our village. Oh, okay. So we got our best fatigues on, and Hoochins and I each had a sawed-off shotgun. He had an old pump model with a hammer model, old trench gun that was left over from World War I, and I had an 870, sawed-off 870 with a bandolier cartridges. And I thought, well, we're just going to go down to Khartoum here, you know, which is right across the river there, uh, and have a party, you know, go to their houses. Well, no, we go down there and we get on a Sickalo. And there's like six of us, you know, four of them, two Americans, and we pile into this thing. It's, no, it's fine. And the next thing you know, we're driving down this road, you know, and driving and driving and driving. And it's like, where in the fuck are we going? Oh, no, my village is right up here, which means it's either 100 yards or
3
100.
miles.
Yeah, you know, and so we stop, and the next thing I know is this, you know, we're just about to Docto. We're just about to the border. And
Yeah.
we stop and we go off into the brush. They said he stops the guy, we pay him, and it's like, fuck. Well, we're into it now. So me and Hoochin, we follow in there, and sure enough, we come to their village, and it is the most outstanding mountain mud village I'd ever seen. It still had the big, tall, long houses, you know, with a cut log, steps into the log going up, and the pigs underneath. And, you know, they're about 8 feet, 8 feet off the ground, you know, with the fire pits in there and the long houses, 3 or 4 families living in there, you know, and they have a party. We get out the dosium, you know, they pound stakes into the ground or tie the big jars to the stake. So when you get drunk, you won't kick them over and spill all the stuff, you know. And then put the straw down there. Yeah, it was me and Hoochin. You put the straw down there and you drink a stick. They put a little bamboo stick across the top and it goes down. They fill it with water and then you got to sip that thing down till it breaks the tension on the stick. And the medicine man, the head guy there, he lines them all up according to strength and it's according to quality. So you started with the worst quality and then work your way up. And there was like 6 or 7 jars of this stuff. You know, the big jars are 2.5, 3 feet high almost. And yeah, we just got sick to death drinking all this stuff. And in the middle of the night, they said, oh, we got to go. We got to go. Where are we going? He says, well, we got to go to the other end of the village. And so they sneak us out because the NBA had come into the other end of the village. And they had come, and I didn't find this out till later, but they also knew people in the village, right? And so you know, the Montagnards want to stay on the best side of both people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't want us mixing. When Mark came up there, Mark Pollack from CCN, they flew in there with a helicopter and got them all pissed because it just like said, hey, we're here, you know? And nobody knew where. Yeah, Mark told me about this. He says, yeah, that was a mistake that we made. We didn't do that again. But they just snuck us around. You know, we grab our little shit. And I didn't have me and Hoochin didn't have much web gear. We just had our little shotguns and our bandoliers. And the next day we went down to the creek there. And Hoochin and those guys got into a little wooden dugout and we're playing in the water. And I'm so freaked out. I'm standing guard on the bank. And I thought to myself later, I said, you know, if the Viet Minh came, there is nothing that me and Hoochin are going to do. You know, the Mountaineers don't have their weapons with them. They left them back at their village, you know. But evidently they knew when there was people in the area and when there wasn't, you know. They had like the jungle drums or some type of communication, but yeah.
That is
So
wild.
we partied with those guys all night and ended up sleeping and just never waking up, never being sicker in my life. And they took care of us. Sure enough, 2 days later we get back on this little Sickalo that we walk through a trail out to the road And I remember those red dirt roads up there, up by Dock Toe. Got back on and went back to Khartoum, which was probably, oh, I don't know, I'd say a good 20 miles is that we did on those roads.
That's
And
a
it was like,
long trip.
and Hooch and I, let's looked at each other and says, what? Did we just do that? Did we just agree to do that and did that?
I can't imagine the hangover on that ride back to
Oh,
Khartoum y'all must have had.
oh my God. I remember I'm so sick from this stuff. I'm just having chills, you know, and and I can't even stand the smell of my own breath. I'm dry heaving because I heaved up everything I ever had in my stomach. I mean, I all puked out.
Jeez Louise.
But
Wow.
some of that stuff, when you get up toward the end jugs of that dosiem, that's pretty powerful. So I
Oh.
remember the last jug of that, the last couple of sticks, it had enough alcohol in it to burn your tongue. So it was
Oh.
it was like probably 40 or 50 proof, 60 proof. And ah
Oh, I'm sure it was higher than proof. It was probably over 100 proof and probably 30-40% alcohol.
yeah,
This is,
probably,
yeah, this
yeah,
stuff you could use with a flamethrower or something.
and make it so yeah. I mean
Ooh.
the weaker stuff was kind of clearish, milky, like coconut milk. When you get up to the strong stuff, it was yellow. it was
Man.
like the color of gasoline.
Yeah. And I bet it smelled like gasoline or
Oh.
something thereabouts.
And the one thing that was really cool is you drink it and then get up and go somewhere, turn around and just throw up. And the mountaineers love that. They pat you on the back, come on back and drink some more. So they would do it too. It'd make them sick. They'd throw it up and then they'd come back. And that was a sign of being, manly.
One of the guys.
You're one of the guys now. Yeah, you throw up and then come back and drink some more. You're okay.
That's tough,
But
tough.
but it was up there that I saw and learned about their justice system. You know, and how they would tell if somebody was lying or not. And it was real simple. If there was an issue about a guy that had set out a snake trap, that's why they put a pig inside a fenced-in area, and the snake would come in and swallow the pig, and couldn't get out because the stakes were, this far apart. But once he ate the pig, he was a
He
big
ain't getting out
lump
of that
guy,
hole.
and so they'd kill the snake and the pig, which is already dead, and eat it. But there was an argument about that, and they had the two complainants go to the head guy and the medicine man there, and uh, open up your mouth. They put a handful of dry rice in there, in each one of their mouth, and then have them spit it out. And the one that couldn't spit out the rice or had the most rice left in his mouth, he was a liar. He was the one that
Wow.
wasn't. And there's a physiological reason for that. Is they get dry mouth. You're telling the truth. You don't have a dry mouth. You can spit. You got saliva, but you're lying. Well,
Wow.
you're
That is
you're you
interesting.
got the rice in your mouth. Now I'd never seen it done, but I'd heard that also a way of telling if somebody's telling the truth is you cook up some lead, like lead bullets, melt them in a cup or in a ladle, a cast iron ladle, and have them stick out their tongue, and you pour it down. You pour a little drop down on their tongue. The one with the wet tongue, the wet mouth, it'll sizzle and you'll spit it out and you won't be burned. The one with the dry mouth gets burned and a
Ooh,
blister shows. It's a little.
good.
Now I don't know. Like I say, I never saw that. I just heard this from the mountain guys telling me about it. But that was something. That was for something big.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you had to steal more than a snake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
Oh man.
but that was so interesting. And I like that stuff. I listen to that stuff, you know. And so, and I wanted to make friends with the Montagnards uh, for a couple of reasons. One, I was interested in it, and it was fun. And two, these are guys that are going to maybe save your ass, you know, that are going to stick with you. So you want to be friends with them, you know.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I was curious about that. What when you're not in the field, what's it look like with training and off time? Are the Americans sticking together in the hooch, or the whole team together training and spending time together? What's that like when you're
Oh
not in the
no,
field?
yeah. Well, we always got together, and I learned this once again from Archie, California, because they had built little fake bunkers outside of their. Yeah, there's Hoochen and Hecker, but uh, and me sitting there. Oh my God. Anyway, you would practice throwing grenades into the little slits of the bunkers, right?
Oh, okay.
So, and outside of Archie, California's team hooch, was the line, was the outside fence, the bunker line, and they had built it up there on the top of the bunkers, a flat area. And so we would get together and practice throwing the grenades in there because, you know, you just don't throw. You got to have a purpose when you throw a grenade. You
Mhm.
know, you can't just throw them anywhere. You can't throw them into a tree and have them bounce back at you or something stupid. But you want to get them on target, and and then we'd have a barbecue out there in that grenade area. There was a little barbecue pit made, and that's what Masterson and I and some of the other guys and the mountain yards from RT, California, the Sedang mountain yards and the Sedang mountain yards from Hawaii. That's where we ate Georgia. You know, we
Oh,
barbecued half of her there, and then deep fried the other half in the mess hall. So,
oh,
and I,
so
I, I see Georgia in these pictures, and you have to realize this. That was a year, maybe even a year and a half, 2 years before I got to meet her. And so, yeah, there you go. There's your barbecue area. And so, and so what they did is we barbecued them up just like the mountain yards would cook them for half of the snake, and then deep fried it, breaded them and deep fried them in the over at the mess hall. And man, some people just have no sense of humor or no sense of adventure. The officers were pissed that we did that. It was like they were upset. We can't. We eat our French fries out of that oil, and it was like, well, okay. And of course we're going to eat it. It's just like, what would they say? Tastes like rubbery chicken. But, yeah, there we go. There she is. That's Georgia. And you can see she was probably, oh, I don't know, a good 7, 8 feet long there.
oh yeah. This was around the tailwind era time frame, and I can
Okay.
only imagine how big she got by the time you saw her.
And yeah, and he's got the colored stripes on, not the subdued stripes still. So yeah, so when we got her, she was probably 8 or 10 feet. And I would say a good 65 or 75 pounds. And
Oh, I heard she had to stay in the mortar pit after like guys found her in the room trying to sleep, and they were like, "Nope, she's staying in the mortar pit now."
yeah, right. Yeah, because there was a worry. There was a worry somebody might wake up with a necktie they didn't want.
Oh yeah, and she was big enough to cause some damage if she wanted to.
Yeah.
Oof, wow.
And so then they built that cage for her outside, and God, that cage was huge. It was a big cage, and she could still fit in it back and forth twice, two or three times. And that cage was probably 6 by 4 by 4, you know, feet, which is a big cage. The guys, the carpenters at the base there had built it for them at their request, but I remember waking up in the morning and looking out there, and there they are with George, or two guys, and I recognize them, but I can't think of their names again. And they're skinning her, and they had their hands full. There's two of them, and that snake was skin's halfway off, and it's still wrapping around their legs and their wrists.
Oh, that's a
And
big old, yeah. Oof.
they took the skin, and the Mountaineers, especially the Sedang, said, "Yeah,
We're eating
we're up
this
for the
thing.
meat. We'll take the meat, no problem." You know. And
That is,
of course, me and Masterson, being the adventuresome type, we went up there and ate it right with them. And it wasn't bad at all. I mean, people I've talked to, I've eaten rattlesnake before or
oh
other
yeah.
type of thing. Constrictors, I guess, are a little bit more chewy because their muscle structure is a little different. But
Mm-hmm. Legit snake eaters.
also out there to all you MACV-SOG guys, something that I'm curious about that I would like to know, and I think I mentioned this to you before, Bud, was the phantom shitter.
Yes, someone brought this up in the comments and wanted to know about the Phantom shitter.
Yeah. So if somebody knows who that was, yeah, yeah, there's me and Sugar and Hecker and oh wow, God, a guy on the end there. Sugar was just
Billy
coming back from
Lewis.
oh
Billy
what
Lewis right here.
yes,
Yeah.
right, Billy
RT
Lewis.
West Virginia man.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Billy Lewis. Ah, excellent.
And I don't. It looks like you're in all black. I don't know if it's the color frame or not.
No,
Walking
that was
down.
yeah. That I had a set of black fatigues made up for well, whatever use they might come to.
Oh wow,
You know.
excellent. I
So
was always curious about that. What you were up to in black fatigues.
well, there were times when we had considered and thought about going uh, all NVA or going all black pajamas, so to speak. You know.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and so I never ended up doing it because just like you see how tall Sugar is.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and I'm not that much shorter, probably 5'11", like to say back then I like to say 6 foot.
6 foot.
Yeah, 6 foot. And you kind of stick out.
Oh, I was about to say anything over 5'11", trying to look like an NBA is
Yeah,
definitely sticking
right.
out.
And it's more like around 5'6",
Yeah,
They come
sure.
they come out around 5'6". You get a pair of jungle boots on because I tried those NVA sneakers, the little batter boot type sneakers, they're green with the rubber, and there's no way you could get comfortable in those. You know, they would first to get a size big enough for your foot.
We there's a few questions, and I'll start sprinkling in some of the viewer questions here about but what always it comes up for CCC guys. What about the leggings that you guys made famous? What,
Oh, this
what
picture! I love this picture. I had this picture in my. Uh, Bud, where did you get this one?
this is, gosh, this is in one of Jason's books. It might be in RT Texas, or
Oh, California.
I'll have to
But
figure
that's
out what.
me.
Yes,
But
sir. John
I
Good back
am
there.
I am the championship cribbage player of Ben Het. That's where we are sitting right now, Ben Het and loving it. I can see Good in the background with his tall frame and his thing, and that's and we're sitting there playing cribbage. Yeah. Oh, I love that picture.
That is
But
a great picture.
the leggings were when you see Masterson here from RT California, he's got them on. We all got them on,
Mhm.
and the deal is someone had gotten leeches and bugs and ants up their legs, you know, and so uh, uh, RT California started, but I don't know if they were the first one, but they did it, started wearing them, and so we all started wearing them, and that and the the jungle fatigue tops with the pockets in the shoulders, and the bottom pockets, the down here by your hip on the blouse, we took those off because we tucked them in and tied the belt up tight. So you were sealed up on your legs, and you could blouse your pants in your regular combat boots, but about a half hour walking in the jungle and they were loose or they were out or they something was wrong with them. And those you just kind of folded the pants around and laced them all up. You always put the laces though on the inside of the leg, so the right legging was on the left leg and the left legging was on the right leg. And then what I did is in the back of my right legging is I stuck an Air Force survival knife. It's a knife with a little saw on the back and a clip point and a little sharpening stone in it. And they used to issue them to the Air Force pilots for the survival knife. And it wasn't a long bladed knife, probably about the blade itself, probably about 4.5, 5 inches or so long. If I can get that picture in there. And it had a little saw on the back, and it was sharp, but it was mainly for digging. That's why I had it. And I wore it back there. I turned it around the back, and I know I shouldn't have because it was a trip hazard. It's a slip and trip hazard, but I did anyway because that's where I wanted it. And I didn't want it up on my chest because I had too much other stuff to wear. When you get your mini mask and all the other stuff you hang off your web gear, you got and you got to be able to. And you got a chest pack on, an NBA chest pack.
Or the M79 vest that you had.
Yeah. And then if you're not wearing that, you're wearing that M79 vest. The things. I didn't have any room for it, so I just wore it back there, and tried not to trip. But I stuck it down in there real deep.
That is a famous photo right there.
That's a profiling picture. I just taking pictures for shits and giggles, I mean, I loved that weapon system. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I didn't get it till I was halfway over there. But I have to admit, my favorite of all time was the RPD because you could really scare some people with that and you really do some damage, and you had 100, 120, they all added the extra links to them, so instead of 100, it came with 100 round linked belt inside the metal case, and I mean cleaning links. Yeah, there we go. And we added another extra 20 links on there, so you had 100. Your first drum was 120 rounds, and you put a piece of linoleum. I heard somebody else talk about this the other day, just on TV.
At Walkoff.
Yeah, Walkoff. I've been watching these MACV-SOG guys. As you put that piece of linoleum, floor linoleum, in there, so it wouldn't, because other than that, those things would clang back and forth like crazy. And you made sure you went out and tested all your drums and all your links to make sure that you didn't have a fucked up one somewhere that would jam up the gun or one that would stick, or you made sure right down to the detail. Right down to the detail. It's not like you tried every single drum, every single leg. You made sure that sucker worked smoothly because you didn't want to get it fucked up. And I always think of that movie, the Ghost in the Darkness. You remember that with the two lions in Savo, Africa?
And
it was with Val Kilmer and
that old famous actor, and I'm blanking on who it is.
Yeah, but Val Kilmer was the bridge builder, and that Ghost in the Darkness were the man-eating lions.
The hunter they hired to kill the man-eater.
The hunter they hired, Remington, was the stage name for this hunter, and he goes, "You went into battle with an untested weapon," and that was like, yeah. That really hit home to me because you never go into battle with an untested weapon, and I learned that almost the hard way, because when one of the first missions that I was on up there was a strap hanger, the Lions of Savo. Yeah, that's it. Uh, and it was I was going on a bright light mission
Oh,
for when that officer had gotten shot out of the helicopter. Uh,
Fred Krupa?
uh, Boy, I thinking that that's the name, but it was he was out of CCC and he was going in with a mic force on something, and it was almost as if they ambushed him. They knew they were coming,
Oh,
and the sergeant major, Montagnard sergeant major guy, or head first sergeant, reached over and grabbed him as he was coming in the helicopter, and he got shot through his hand.
mm-hmm.
That one,
Yes, sir.
and shot into him, and then the bullets went in, and it was 51. It was a
Yeah.
51.
Yeah. Fluid just.
You know the mission. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
Well, he went down. He fell out of the helicopter, and I got lost in there. And the next day, they were going to send in the bright light team, and I was on that. They said, "Well, you're not doing nothing here." And they gave me that guy that was on leave, his RPD, and I had to take it out there to the helicopter pad right outside of CCC and run a bunch of rounds through it. It did not have the front sight on it to make sure that this thing was run, because I'm not taking somebody else's weapon that I've never shot, and I was not happy about that. And another guy came and gave me extra ammo to fill up the belts that I had shot up, the ammo I had shot up to make sure the thing worked. And after that, it was like, Steve, you're never, ever going to be caught in that situation again. And sure enough, we launched on that mission, and we were on short final into that LZ, and I was with them, and how did I get stuck on that? I don't know to this day. Anyway, we're on short final, and they called it off because another team had gotten into a prairie fire emergency up farther north of us, and so they pulled us out, and we went back to Polyclang or Placerang, one of the places that we launched from, or maybe it was Docto that we launched from. But that was like, I'm standing around getting ready to leave CCC, and friends of these guys on the team that I'm going with, and I don't know that many people yet, They're putting Buddhas in each other's mouths, gold Buddhas, and saying, doing their little rituals, and I'm going, something tells me this is fucked. This is going to be fucked. But then we went back in there into that area with where it was the Idrang Valley area. It's famous from 1967, 68, But we went back in there with the CRP team, but then we had it all set up where we had all the air available and got to watch the Phantoms come in and do their little cluster bombing runs and the 500 pounders where they would flip upside down and watch it fly out upside down so they could look through the top of their canopy to see where they hit. It was a great show. But we went back in there, and after that, when we went back in there that second time, I shouldn't say because we didn't get on the ground. We went back in there. They had moved out. The NVA had moved out. The Viet Minh were gone because they knew that if they stuck around, hell was coming. So that was a spooky thing. And it seemed like I always got to walk into those things, and somehow came out smelling like a rose. It's like Masterson says to me. He says, Steve, I watch all this stuff on YouTube now, on television, and everybody got wounded. He says, Steve, I never got wounded. Was I doing something wrong? And I said, no, not really. I mean, Masterson took on a bunker with his RPD. standing.
Joe Walker. I
With,
mean,
yeah, right. With RT California, they had 2 wounded on the team already. I was on that mission with them, and they had 2 wounded. Um, Luckily, the wounds weren't fatal. They were in the arms and stuff, but I mean, he walked down a bunker and, with his RPD and just chewed the thing up. It was just accurate fire because of all the practicing. I think RT California was one of the teams that they could shoot. They could shoot, and they could shoot accurately. And they practiced going out and seeing how long they could maintain their firepower, and if they were in a bad situation. Would it be 15 minutes? I mean, before they were empty, a half hour, an hour, and they worked on it. So they had several different immediate action drills, and ways of doing it. So and he said, "Did you ever get wounded, Steve?" I said, "No, I didn't either." He said, "Does that mean something bad coming to us?" I got some bamboo splinters in my neck one time from the gunfire there. It shot up the bamboo and whatever, and it was like, God, Ray. I told him this. I says, "Ray, I'm going to go into some place and tell him I got wounded from a bamboo splinter in the neck." That would be like getting a splinter in your finger, or sticking yourself with a fish hook. I mean, it's not, that's kind of chicken shit.
never live that one down. That would be.
You never live that one down, ever. Yeah, that would be
Um,
terrible.
what we saw a minute ago when you were carrying your RPD, and I thought I saw a drum loose, but what did you carry your RPD drums, your spare drums in when you were waiting to use them?
Well, canteen, 2-quart canteen covers
Hmm.
were common. Also, what I made up to save space and weight, because the 2-quart canteen covers had uh, a fleece inside of them. Uh, uh, you know, and they would get wet if it rained, and they'd just give you extra weight. So I took the mini mask covers, right, and took them to the tailor and had them cut the strap, cut the latch off, add a piece of fabric in there, a piece of canvas, and then I could snap it down so the drum would fit in there. Yeah,
Wow.
so that's what I used. But I got to tell you, is I went back to the canteen covers because Davidson and I talked about it. You wanted to save your drums and your links. Now, not so much the drums, because you could seem like they always had empty drums, but having the RPD links, that was the thing that
Where
you.
did y'all get y'all's links? Because it seemed to be hard supply. Where did y'all find them? Did y'all get them off raids and bring some home from missions, or?
Well, no, not so much as that, uh, but somebody was scrounging for us, and
Okay.
then every once in a while they'd show up, and they'd be like maybe a dozen RPDs, with 20 drums and the links show up. And they call us up, the people who were using them, said, "Hey, you need one?" I mean, I remember one guy came in. He had a waterproof bag, what do you call a waterproof bag, full of Browning high powers, and one of them had the old Belgian Nazi markings on it, the old eagle and the swastika, and it go
Wow.
like, "Where did you get this from?" And he said, "Well," it was like,
Let me
okay. And I said, "Well, I want that one." I said, "I'm going to take that home as a Warsaw souvenir." He said, "No, it's
That's
already been asked for.
yeah.
Somebody's
Oh
seen it
yeah.
already." So,
That
but with
wow.
the RPD, I just carried a 38, you know, oh, 6-shot 38, because it was light, and I could cover it up. and I probably thought that somewhere along the lines I said, well, I could always shoot myself with it because we always talk like we're not going to be taken captive. We're not.
Oh
No,
God.
not going to be taken captive because there was the horror stories about that.
Oh geez, yes. Oh,
You
oh
don't want to be caught. Not as a MACV-SOG operator. That would
no,
not have been a fun. That would not
no,
have been fun.
no. We know Mr. Caviani's story from that.
Yeah. Ooh.
Uh, would when you went with the M79 vest, how many would you fully load it up, and would you carry the M79 and well, you had the M203. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
So
M203. Yeah, I never carried one of the little pistols. The
okay.
little pistol 79s, but people did.
Mhm.
And people on other teams did. We had Yang. We had a Yang on our team, and Yang was a Montagnard, Sedang Montagnard, and this guy was Mr. M79.
Wow.
That I mean, we tried to get him to carry other stuff. We thought about it, and the XM203, you wanted to carry that or whatever. No, he was Mr. M79. That was one of those guys that could do anything with that. He was hell on wheels with that M79. And he carried 40 or so rounds, which is a lot of M79 ammo. And I remember out there, Ranger Melvin had come through and said, "Hey, have put out some fire because we got the helicopters coming in and we'll keep people back." And I went over to talk to Yang. I said, "Yang, put out some rounds." And he says, no, I don't want to. He says, "What if NBA come? Then I can't kill them." And I said, "I'll shoot up all my rounds." I started thinking about that. Same thing with Ray. You learn stuff from your Montagnards. And I asked Ray, I said, "Where'd your hat go? You lost your hat, And, and he said, no, I have my hat tucked in my shirt because we get in contact soon. I'll run, I'll lose my hat." And so I looked at Ray and made sure if he had his hat on or his hat off from then on, because I knew if his hat was off, he had a premonition. And sure enough, that time we had his hat off, and I'm gonna be the big 1-1, the big American, and chew his butt out, and I come away looking like a fool, And it's like,
Wow.
oh no, I got that figured. Now we know that.
I mean, their jungle-like spider senses are just
Oh, they're just
something to
amazing.
behold. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
yeah.
the thing that killed me, didn't kill me, a bad choice of words, that I was
Saves you.
amazed with, is they go with you. It's like they're going down there and they recommend, maybe we won't go down there, Buku, Viet Minh, but they'll go. If you're going to go push the issue, they'll go with you.
Wow.
And with the Sedang, with RT Hawaii, and I know with RT California, who I got to know a lot of the yards on that team as well. They were some brave motherfuckers, and they have been doing that for years. You know, they probably started as a rough pup at some village somewhere with an M2 carbine, and worked their way up through the
Mike
Force.
Force, the SOG, Delta,
whatever the projects, and now they had gotten to Recon, they got 5 years combat, 6 years combat experience, seven of them, some of them, and it's like, huh. And so, yeah, they were good.
that
Spider
wild.
sense, like you talk about it, they had that, they had that.
It seems like every guy we talk to, there's at least all of them were good in the woods, but it seems like every guy we talk to has one on the team that had even more abilities that everybody looked to know if something was about to happen, like you were just talking about.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
Amazing. Did you?
And
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
oh no,
jump
I'm
on.
just saying we had Hamek, who was, and you don't these guys don't get talked about enough. Hamek was a tail gunner, and you had to have a top-notch tail gunner. You couldn't have somebody slacking off. Now, point man is great, and everybody it's sexy and it's dangerous and all that. But if you didn't have a good tail gunner, then you're fucked. Somebody will walk right up your ass, and you're in trouble. And here's a guy that's got to follow you guys around and continually be turning around and looking back and be continually fixing things that he sees broken, you know, and that. So, yeah, Hamek was our tail gunner. There's Yang with his fist in the air, right there. The M79 gunner I was telling you about, that guy. Yeah,
Oh
that
wow,
was Mr. M79. He was the best, you know.
a
And then,
gnarly group of warriors right there.
yep, and then, yep, they were. There's Dra, the smiling one, who I got my hand on there now. That's Pac, the point man. And then the one sitting next to me over here is Mac, off to my right shoulder. Yeah. So,
Wow. I
yep.
mean, they look like kids, some of them, but I mean, all
Oh,
the
I
stuff
know.
they had been through by this point in time, like you were just saying, it's just unbelievable the amount of warfare they've lived through.
Yeah, exactly. And to be able to keep um, an attitude
Their
and
childlike
a
innocence and
childlike
love.
happiness, be able to be happy, to be able to relax and to decompress off that. I don't know of uh, many people that could do that. I mean, the idea of traumatic stress syndrome to them was like, what's that?
Non-existent.
Never heard of it.
No.
So it must not be a real thing.
I
you
mean,
know?
yeah. I mean, one guy was saying, y'all go home, do extension leaves or even R&Rs, and they'll get lucky and get a few days off at the village every so often, but they're there fighting the war until it was over, one way or the other. I mean, they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
in it for the long haul. Uh,
And that's why there was the Furu movement.
yo,
Okay,
yes, sir.
and
Yeah.
and that, uh, from what I understand, the South Vietnamese were not pleased with that.
No, no, no.
Not at all,
No.
because they recognized that there was a danger there,
Hmm.
and they they took the they went from their little crossbows and stuff to firearms. They're hunters, they're hunter gatherers. They took it up just like that.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, they fell right into that whole deal. You know,
And
and
they were
so
getting weapons and trying to we've heard from some of the guys on here that they actually before they left country left weapons and buried them intentionally to make sure the South Vietnamese or the NVA didn't
hmm,
well, they knew they were going to take over, but at least give them a fighting chance, so to speak. And most of them were full row. Well, as a matter of fact, one of the guys I forgot. Gosh, I think this was a CCN vet that was telling us that he ended up being a general or a major in the full row. That the guy that he had been almost best friends with his whole tour and thought he was just the interpreter. Turns out he's this undercover bigwig, down out of Bambi Tooie.
hmm, hmm, hmm.
So just cool stuff like that.
Yeah,
Didn't you go to Bambi Tooie? Did you ever did you have some kind of a mission around Bambi Tooie at some point
yeah,
or?
yeah. We did. We went down there because there was a rescue letter found. The rescue letter is a letter
Oh,
uh, that they give to the Air Force or to pilots, and it'll be a V or an X or a F or E or C, and they will make it out of whatever they have: grass, leaves, branches.
okay.
And so, if you're shot down or if you need rescue, you would put out this letter or you try to make this letter, and so it could be seen from the air. And so they had a rescue letter show up, and they took the CRP down there. We all piled into a big C-130 Blackbird and went down there. And poor Masterson and Davidson is RT California. I just found this out recently when I talked to him a few years ago. There's that poor Masterson and RT California said, "You were on that mission." He says, "Yeah, I know we were there." He says, "But you know what? You don't remember. They made us stay back as a reaction force, as a bright light force for you guys. I never got to go in." And we had a big briefing, and resources were coming in, and helicopters. We had the Air Force November model Hueys that were new in country. Of course, they had like 1,000-foot ceiling. They wouldn't fly if they didn't have 1,000 feet visibility, which made them useless to us, you know. And we had the Gladiators and the Comancheros, and when they got there, we went on that mission at pitch black in the morning and in the fog, and they flew through the main gate down the highway at about 4 feet off the highway.
Jeez.
You know, until they go into the next refueling place, and you know, they were amazing. They were just absolutely amazing. And then we had these Super C guys that showed up from somewhere, and they're flying. Now we got the brand new Novembers, and now these guys with the old Charlie model Hueys, you know, the little tadpole gunships, you know, the very first gunships, and they were nuts. They were just totally fucking crazy. And you know, sure, you want, you know, we'll strap you to our rocket pods and take you right in on top of that letter. You want to go there? You know, and so they're like the Air Force guys. And so when the November model Air Force people were asked about that in that briefing, is Super C guys were there, and they were kind of chuckling at him. And one guy got up and said, "You know, one thing I want to ask you guys, I want to ask about." He said, "I didn't ask you guys this. I want to ask about is what your ceiling, your service ceiling is, and when you'll fly. But I don't want to ask you guys. I want to ask the November guys." And that's when we found out, oh, they have to have 1,000 feet. And it was like, oh, come on, give me a break. The Spads would go in under 1,000 feet.
I was about to say helicopters at 1,000. That's insane.
Know, so they wanted to brand new November model Hueys, all nice, I suppose. But the Super C guys and our guys, who finally, it was like, you know, we had to get on a Blackbird or a C-130 to fly down there, you know, and then putting together whatever resources we can. Well, our helicopter pilots just took it upon themselves and got the word, and they flew down. And so at the end of the briefing, they come walking in the hallway. All this noise outside. Oh, never mind. We don't need,
our rods are here.
Yeah, we don't need you guys anymore. And that was that. Yeah.
God love those chopper pilots. The Gladiator guys that watch the show will be happy to hear that that some of their guys stepped up like that. Heck, they may know of them. That's one thing. Those aviators that supported, we know a lot of them from Pontoon because we've had more of you guys on. But God Almighty, were they brave?
Oh my God, were they? Yeah. They were fantastic. Yeah. They could fly up the fucking devil's ass and tap dance on his lungs, you know? They were fucking just...
That's the best way I've ever heard that put. That is absolutely perfect. We were... there was somebody else that was asking about... by this time frame, we had heard from an early, I think in 68 or 69, Leghorn, the radio relay site. Had you heard of anybody doing walk-off missions? Because we had heard earlier they used to walk off and try and recon out there. Was this shut down by your time? Was it too hot?
You mean the stay behind?
Yes, sir. Basic. Yeah, yes, sir.
Where they would hook up with like a leg unit
Larger.
or infantry unit, and then just kind of fade off as they walked.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we heard about them, but they weren't doing those so much. And
Okay.
I think the deal was because the places that they wanted to recon, there weren't no infantry going. There wasn't an infantry
No.
unit going in there. You know, there was some that battle of the Idrang Valley was a terrible place to be, and that was a real popular place for the Viet Minh and the NVA because that was one of their main supply routes. I mean, when Vietnam fell, the main push came through. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong about this, but it came through the Central Highlands. You know, they came down through there. Never was expecting it to come through the DMZ and all that stuff, and down the Ashau. And don't get me wrong, probably the worst target in the whole world was up there in the Ashau Valley. You know, but Curry had told me about Juliet 9, which was a target. Oh, your eyes went big and you're nodding your head. Oh, you heard about it. You heard about Juliet 9.
Yes, sir.
Luckily, I had never been there, and I'm probably here today, knock on wood, because I never was. That was a badass place to go.
Oh, yes.
And there was some crazy stuff going on there.
I think that may have been maybe where Bob Howard or somebody or maybe Joe Walker, somebody ended up having one of their big hellacious battles, I think, in the Juliet area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Or maybe Ed Walkoff in New York. I'm having trouble with my brain today.
Well, they were, I maybe some of the other SOG guys can help me in this because, I remember, I've seen pictures from the field, Joe Walker and his team, tapping wires, finding commo wire, and tapping them. But also they had talked about they had found a coaxial cable that had been laid down there, Now we're not talking the one that goes across the bottom of the ocean, but something with enough cables in it to run a small city.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, some of the guys found, and there's some in one of these editions, I'll try and find it and send it to you, but they actually found wooden, terrible constructed telephone poles where they actually ran them through the trees over a creek and river. So, they were out there.
Yeah, there you go. That's crazy.
Yeah. So you never you didn't ever pull off any wiretaps?
No.
That's probably a good thing also.
We did. It did go when I was with a mission with RT New Hampshire. We did drop. It was called a psychological operation. PSYOPs, and we we're proud to carry one of those little radios that they're in a green case with the little red marks on them that can get the two channels real good and the rest of the channels real bad, and then the packets of letters, that you drop from Nugent Van Hoogen to saying, "Oh, how terrible the war is going, honey, I miss you," to his girlfriend. And I got to tell you right now, we knew what they were because and the NBA, the Viet Minh, they knew what they were. They knew all this stuff, and they just kept doing it for some reason. And so, of course, we did everything we were supposed to do. We left them out there somewhere in the woods. Maybe they'll find them. Maybe another 50 years from now, somebody will come across them. Because you're not going to put them on. I mean, let's face it. You're not going to put them on a trail or on a road and walk away and leave them there so somebody will find them and go like, "Oh,
somebody's been here.
SOG team's been here."
Yeah.
And of course, later on, and the Viet Minh started developing the hunter-killer teams. They're Tron Bach or Lin Bach, whatever their name was for them. But they finally got pissed off enough to say, these guys are hurting us. Maybe not so much with their intel, but being able to locate and call in for airstrikes.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I've been on the ground, which is kind of a neat thing to be when a I believe the little radio that played only propaganda stations. That's it. And they also sent out a signal to bombers. Hey, thank you, Terry. Called him back. Thank you. That's what they did. Yeah.
He was a Hatchet Force vet at Khartoum.
Okay. Yeah, I think I recognize the name. Ah, cool.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So anyway.
It's funny you mentioned the letters because in Jason's maybe not his newest, but the one before this most recent one, he's actually got maybe 3 or 4 examples. He's got one talking about the lover saying, "Oh, I miss you so." He's got one that's talking about where he's talking about leadership is terrible, we're starving. And then the other one they gave the example is I'm the only survivor. The entire unit's been wiped out. If you find this, share it amongst town that the Americans are much tougher than we anticipated. And I thought that was interesting to see what they were dropping. Although I didn't think, like you said, the NVA were going to be falling for those letters.
Yeah. They they were stupid. They were not stupid, you know.
No. For them to make the road and be as well put together to make it down the trail fighting you guys, and to fight the French out, they by no means were stupid people. I constantly have to tell the same people that wear the Che Guevara shirts that the SOG men weren't fighting farmers. They were actually fighting an army that probably had the most combat experience at that point in time than anybody in the world.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, they were tough.
Well, they fought the French. They fought the Japanese.
Chinese.
Go back to Genghis Khan. Go back to the Kublai Khan, whoever
the Khan was at that time.
Was it? Yeah, that invaded their country and kicked their ass. They sent them home all sick and they were excellent at using the country, the land, and the jungle to their advantage. Yeah.
Okay. This was nothing.
I just put out a request. I would love to know more about the poor gentleman, the captain that was shot in the that had to go on that bright light after that. I never got in on, thank God, but we went on with CRP too. I sure would like to know. You said his name, and maybe you could text me that later, Bud.
I'll when we get offline, I'm blanking unless it was Captain Storter. I'll try and remember the name.
Or if somebody could find out that. And the other thing I wanted to ask, and I want to say maybe this was Upchurch, about the monkey, the rock ape story, where the person gets beat up out in the woods. I'd like to know more about that, because like I say, memories get bad as you get older. Some things you don't forget. Some things I think you embellish, or they're just ingrained in there. And also maybe the MACV-SOG. Does anybody remember that boxing match that I had with Bentley?
Michael Bentley?
Yeah.
From RT Montana?
Bentley and Baylor.
Oh God, Baylor was a former boxer from Chicago. We've heard bad things about him. I won't just run down his name. But.
Yeah, but he was my coach. I got talked into this. It was supposed to be a boxing practice, and when I showed up, No, they had set up a boxing match, and guess what? I was one of the people on there. I was going to be fighting, and this guy, it was Baylor and Bentley were the two guys. Now I don't know if I was fighting. I was fighting Bentley, I think. Baylor was the guy. He was ex Golden Gloves or something.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
an ex boxer, and he was in my corner, and he had all the dirty tricks, and he
Oh,
was
he.
telling me all the dirty tricks to use against this guy. You know, and I just wondered if anybody had seen that fight. Yeah, yeah. If
That's
anybody
Mr.
had
Baylor
seen that
right
fight,
there.
and because he was kind of a shit. Is he still alive?
That's what we don't know, and I won't go into detail, but shit is a good apt word to use. He used that Golden Glove stuff to his advantage, and
Uh
people will get the picture. But one of the young men got tired of that and remedied that situation real quick, to where he
huh.
didn't do that again.
You know, you got to be nice.
Oh,
You
that
got to be
that
nice to people.
yeah. Especially on a SOG compound. You may not be able to be good with your fist, but that don't mean you're not good with a knife or a pistol.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Uh,
you you might end up with a bamboo viper in your sleeping bag. You know.
that too, that too, that too. Um, gosh, we're having so much fun and the people are enjoying this. We've just hit 2 hours here. I was gonna see, would you be open to coming back and talking to us
Sure,
again?
sure. I was so worried that it's going to go badly. It probably will.
No,
You know, and if I get any hate mail, well, bring it on.
no. The entire chats has actually been saying they're happy to see you're laughing and it actually enjoying yourself. So I
Yeah,
told you
I am.
you'd have a good time, and I know around the 2 hour mark we start losing attention because
Yeah,
folks have work and all of that. But I was gonna see
I just
uh
noticed that.
yeah. Would you mind, since we're kind of at a midway point, would you mind if we did a part two, and then you could talk about towards the end of your tour and ending your tour?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Or
Only only if Howard Sugar does. Yeah,
I'm
Howard Sugar, you're out there. You better get back on here. I enjoyed your podcast too. I watched
I
the whole thing.
he's gonna be watching that, and I you know what? I mean, would you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what it was like and towards the end, and then we can have you back and we can tell some more stories, like what how long did you keep running Recon, or up until the last day, or did you go to work in the talk, or work Cubby?
Well, you know, since I was kind of on a strange deal, you know, and actually had extended to, to be in Vietnam, right?
I forgot about that.
Extended to go with with Mrs. Alexander, and and so when it was time for me to leave, I ran right up to the end, and when it's time for me to leave, they like just said, "Pack your shit. You got to get out of here now." And I got the feeling sometimes, and talking to the first sergeant, who I never talked to that much, I got the feeling that they kind of thought maybe I was going a little native on them, you know, that
uh,
I liked the yards too much, and that, and so there was, you know, I talked about reenlisting, but I couldn't stay there. If I did, I would have to go someplace else. And you know, and I thought at the time, well, that could be bumfuck Egypt, you know. So
that's crazy that they had the little idea, or were thinking, although this might help with the you going native or Asiatic with your Montagnard ceremonial shirt on. Uh, but I mean, that's crazy that
oh
there
my
you
God,
are, a
it's
great
Colonel Kurtz.
yeah, exactly, exactly, going upriver on them. I mean, that they're gonna let you
uh,
pass the prospect of wanting to come back, that they send you somewhere else, wouldn't let you come back. I mean, that's crazy.
So, yeah. Well, I tell you, the first 2 weeks out, well, I'll save that story for a different time.
Yeah. I kind of wanted
to save that story for a different time.
I wanted to kind of give a time frame on when you left. Did you was it like Jason said? Was it November or was it later in the year of 71?
It was later in the year. It was in March.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of 72 when you left?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. So you took the team leader from 71.
I want to say when I said that it was. I'm going to have to check on my discharge. It might have been February or March, and I can't remember right offhand. So I'll have to dig up my DD 214 and take a look.
Wow, that's interesting because I usually Jason does a great job on everything. He usually has it, and he just has just till your DROS with no date. So I didn't know, and I knew 72, but I thought maybe you were going by January, but you were there quite a while then, into the new year of 72.
Well, like I say, I had to extend 3 months, and I know that I went in to the Army. Well, let's put it this way: I went into the Army and flew off the day after Christmas, and so when I enlisted, I spent Christmas at home, and then that very next day, I went down to Oakland, Alameda Naval Base, Air Base, and got on the plane for Fort Lewis, Washington. And so, yeah.
And then there, almost 2-3 years later, you'd be a few months over, and you'd be coming back on an airplane back to the States from a SOG tour.
Yeah. So it'd be 3 months after that. Yeah. Jeez. So January, February, March, end of March, first part of April. I'll check and see.
Yeah. That's wild to just literally wake you up one day and it's like SOG never existed.
The California yards, a lot of the yards, I got letters from them afterwards. He kept in touch, and they were saying, "Oh, we had something for you. We wanted to see you," and that was like, no, you're going like now, tomorrow. What? So anyway, we'll figure it out.
That's terrible.
I probably should sign off. But okay. It's been more enjoyable than I thought. I hope I didn't ramble.
I told you. This is what we love. I mean, people are already saying you've got to come back. I told you it would be a lot of fun getting to talk and reminisce and look at cool pictures. This is the stuff we live for right here as SOG fans. So okay. I'll if you want me to, I'll get in touch with you and we'll see about getting a part 2, and I'll start bothering Howard and seeing about getting his part 2 set up.
And Masterson too. He's an interesting guy as well.
I'll have to start working on him. I'll be working on him for sure. But guys, I hope y'all had a great day. Me and Mr. Steve had a wonderful time, and as you heard, we're going to be setting up a part 2. So you guys, please keep your eyes and ears peeled and have a good night, safe night, and we will see you guys later.